Schedule a Zoom with me at GCExperts.com/Zoom.
So, really, we lined up this call just to learn more about GCExperts, your guys' program.
Okay.
BJ, I know you're a little more familiar with them and their program. We're looking to get into obviously the government contracting business, and just trying to figure out kind of what your guys' value proposition or what the program looks like, what we should expect to get into that space. So kind of just more of a discovery than anything for us.
Okay, that tells me right off the cusp that it's unlikely that you watched the video that's required viewing prior to coming into this Zoom.
I tried to. I actually tried watching it this morning, and it would not play for me.
Would not play for you?
No, yeah, the YouTube link that's supposed to be watched.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could not get it to go.
Okay, well, I'll give you a 25,000 foot elevation. So between my dad and I, we did over $1 billion in federal government construction contracts over our career. Now, the difference between, what business are you in?
Right now we do residential construction mainly.
Okay, so if tomorrow you go out and you get a $50,000 renovation contract, and you go home and you put it in your filing cabinet or your office, can anybody in the world walk into your office, open up your filing cabinet, and go, holy shit, you got a $50,000 contract? I'm asking you a question.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that your neighbor 5 doors down can just walk down there, open up your door.
I see what you're saying. No, they could not.
No, they cannot, because
Correct.
that contract is private.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But if all my contracts over my entire career were with the federal government, do you think those are private, those contracts, or are they public information?
With the government, I'm assuming public.
That's right. We, the people, get to see how our federal government spends money.
Mm-hmm.
So, any examples I give you in this phone call of jobs that I have done, do you think I would ever lie about any single one of them?
No, because people can fact check you.
That's right, and then you could go make a YouTube video. Don't listen to this guy, he's an idiot. Here's where he told me this, and this is what it actually is. I would never let that happen, and there's just no reason to lie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we did more than 1,000 federal government contracts, generated more than $1 billion worth of revenue. In 2005, my brother was in a boating accident, ended up having a golf ball sized portion of his brain removed. And so my dad was actually on a federal contract in New York at the time. I get a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning that basically said, your brother is in brain surgery right now. I don't know if he's going to live or die, but I need you to go pick your mom up and take her down to the hospital. And I was like, well, holy shit. My only response was, does she know yet? And he said, not yet. I was like, oh, fuck. Okay.
Sorry I had to go through that. That's not a fun story.
It's not, but it's well publicized. If you go to GCExperts.com/about, therethere's some video links there that take you to like ABC News that did a story on it. At one point, the Army was looking into because we ended up investing $5 million over the next 5 years, putting him back together again. And the Army was interested from the TBI standpoint, traumatic brain injury standpoint, because they were getting a lot of TBI patients, what we were doing, because we made a lot of progress with him. But the difference is we weren't coming at it from any other perspective than love for our family member. And we just happened to have all the money, and so we could get the resources. I mean, we brought in people from Russia, from Australia, and all over the United States. He had some certain struggles, and we needed to get the right people in there to help with that.
Yeah, I can't imagine that's an easy process to really get through. That's a long battle.
It wasn't. But you seem young to me, and so I don't know necessarily, you're probably aware of the housing crisis in 2008.
Oh, yes. Very well aware of that.
In 2010, our local newspaper printed an article essentially saying that the construction industry had gone to shit.
Mm-hmm.
My dad religiously reads the Austin American Statesman. And he took exception, so much exception to that article, that he contacted the author and he says, hey, listen, maybe the commercial and residential industry's gone to shit, but in the federal market, it's booming. And she said, what do you mean? He said, Obama just issued the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act. $150 billion has been earmarked to stimulate the economy through construction. It's the same thing that Franklin Delano Roosevelt did doing the New Deal. If you know your history, that in the late 20s, there was a massive recession. We call it the Great Depression. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt was tasked and elected to turn the economy around. And he did something that had never been done before. Prior to the New Deal, when the federal government spent money, they put it in the books as a cost. We built something and therefore it cost money. When he went to Congress as part of the New Deal, he said, listen, when we build roads, bridges, and dams, it increases the value of our country. Therefore, it's not a cost. In other words, he's balancing the books associated with as an investment in our country. Well, that brought us out of the Great Depression and stimulated the economy. Well, future presidents figured that out. And many times when there's been recessions in this country, the government stimulates the economy through construction contracts. So Obama just pulled out the old playbook, issued this $150 billion. The big problem was, in the early days, 100 years ago, you didn't have to be registered in order to. Now you have to be registered with the federal government to get federal contracts, and contractors didn't know how to do that, and they always thought that the government's red tape, the 800-pound gorilla, and all this kind of stuff.
That's kind of what I was thinking, yes.
So what happened in real life was he issued this money, or allocated is the word that we use, and there wasn't enough federal contractors to bid all the work that was put into the stimulus package. And so what they ended up doing was pulling money back out of the stimulus package and putting it into the general fund for the United States Treasury. Turned out it was $47 billion they couldn't get awarded.
That's a large chunk of change.
It's not small.
That's a lot of projects.
Yeah. And so the girl that he was emailing with, she said, would you consider writing an article about that? So, you know, my dad's got nothing to do other than taking care of my brother, and he writes an article. It's called Show Me the Money. On our website, I think it's at GCExperts.com/show money. You can actually read that article.
Okay, perfect.
But keep in mind, we're construction guys. We're not website guys. We're not, you know, at that point, not training guys. He's just writing an article.
Yeah, that's okay. I like the website. It's a no BS website.
Yeah. So then what we didn't know is that when an article gets published like that, other media companies can republish that thing. I don't know what the word is for that, but some magazine picked up that article and reprinted it. It was called Commercial Construction Renovation Magazine. So out of nowhere, some guy in Dallas named Jacob Kroll reads that article and calls us. He figures out who we are. We just get a cold call. My name's Jacob Kroll. I run this organization up in Dallas, Texas. Would you consider coming up here and speaking on stage to my group of roofing and renovation contractors about the opportunity in federal government construction? No problem. So my dad and I, we drive up to Dallas. We give this speech. Now, I don't know what your relationship is with your family members, but is there somebody in your family that just all of a sudden says weird shit and you go, what was that all about?
I think every family has that, so I would say yes.
In my case, it was my dad.
Okay.
It has always been my dad.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he's giving this speech. I do this glorious introduction. My dad. You know, I'm proud of my dad, particularly because I just watched what he did over the last 5 years with my brother. And at the end of this speech, he says, I'll take 10 companies, 2 people per company, into a room for 3 days and teach you everything you need to be successful and launch into the federal government construction market. Now, he just said that in front of 110 guys. So we're walking off the stage and he got bum rushed. Have you ever watched one of those movies or those scenes from the old days, the tickers inside the stock exchange, where the guy's holding up and he's surrounded by people?
Yes, sir.
That's what it looked like. In fact, I was so blown away, I pulled, and I had an iPhone 3 at the time, hit record, and I'm walking around this thing. It was unbelievable. And he limited it. So he took 10 companies, 2 people, that's 20 people. It was $5,000 a piece. He walked out of there with $100,000 worth of checks. We're driving home, and I'm looking at him like, what the hell was that all about? Because he just sold $100,000 worth of tickets to an event that did not exist.
Yeah, that's a pretty good initial poll for something that isn't there yet.
Yeah. So he says, hey, we're a couple of smart guys. There's this problem with Obama and the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act. There's not enough good federal contractors, and I'm just the guy to fix it. Okay, this is what we're doing now. So we drive home for 3 weeks. We're spitballing basically from the concept of if we were going to start over, what would we want to see if we wanted to be successful in the federal market? That was the basic concept.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks later, we go back up to Dallas and we teach this 3-day workshop. And at the end of it, I'm using my iPhone, and I'm just recording people. How did you like what we taught for the last 3 days? They're all blown away. Never heard anything like this before. But how do you know our shit works? Like, how do you know? We talked about it at the beginning of this conversation. How do you know I've done 1,000 federal contracts?
You can go back and double check your work underneath your company name.
It can be proven.
Yep.
Okay? So when you go to my workshop, do I get to know your company name?
You should, yes.
Yeah. So do you think I can start looking that shit up?
Oh, yeah.
So if you go to GCExperts.com/proof. Now, I'm actually going to ask you to do this. Are you in front of a computer?
Yes.
I'm not going to ask you to watch some videos or anything. I just want I want to explain to you how that page works. GCExperts.com/proof. PROOF.
Yep, I've got it up.
Okay. I want you to scroll down to Dennis of AMG. Should be the first major video there. Now, all I want you to recognize is that guy's name is Dennis, his company name is AMG, and actually, if you look at his shirt, I think it says AMG on it.
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
so that's overwhelming proof. Now, just imagine that if you hit that video, he's Dennis, and he's sitting there going, oh my God, these guys are the experts. Okay? I mean, why else would I put them on my website?
Yep, that makes sense to me.
But look at the red button underneath this video.
Mm-hmm.
Click that. That takes you to his public profile on usaspending.gov. Now, you're going to see a number there, and it's going to seem unimpressive. And the reason it seems unimpressive is, what's the dollar amount?
$437,000 at this point from 9 transactions.
So, holy shit, Sean, this guy's been in your program, and he's only done $430,000 worth of contracts? You're only looking at the last 12 months. And actually, I didn't even know it should have been a lot more. Maybe he's taking a year off. Because if you go to the top right of that screen, there's a drop down that you can click it to all time. Oh, I'll bet you that 437 is since the beginning of the fiscal year. In other words, the fiscal year started October 1st.
Oh, that would make more sense then.
That would make a lot. So now click
Yes.
all.
Yeah, year over year, 1.1, 1.1, 750, 800. 900, but yeah, it has been.
Okay.
It's pretty steady at $1 million.
It used to be that I could make a hyperlink to all time, but USA Spending won't let me do that anymore for whatever reason, I don't know. But it used to be when you click that, it was defaulted to all time, so I have to explain that. But
that's okay.
But anyway, if you go through the videos on that page, on that proof page, and you start adding it up, those guys have gotten easily over $400 million worth of contracts. Just those 8 or 9 or 10 guys.
Yeah. If I may ask a question, Sean.
Sure.
What is the, average, awarded amount, and what are usually those company sizes? How many people are they staffing? Are they larger, 50, 60 people operations doing?
I would say most of the guys that come into my program are 1 or 2 guys that are running the whole thing.
Okay. And what's their, average annual?
1 to 4 million.
Amount? 1 to 4.
Okay. Now, but I want you to consider a couple of things because, look, sometimes I'm talking to a guy who does $100 million a year on the roof. Okay. And I don't know where you're at on that spectrum. But I'll just tell you this. My dad and I did $20 to $40 million a year in federal contracts with 6 people. Okay. On the second day of the workshop, I teach not only who those 6 people were by name, but what their roles were, what their responsibilities were in great detail. Okay? So there's no reason, and I'll also tell you this, a lot of guys start small in my program, and when I say small, I mean $150,000 contracts and under, okay? And then within 3 years, they're doing multi-million-dollar contracts. As an example, NBT. I don't know if I've got NBT on that proof page or not, but you can check that. But if you want to link, you just look them up, NBT, on usaspending.gov, and you can find them. But Andy and Bob, the smallest contract they're doing these days is $1 million.
What's the do guys usually specialize in a specific trade, or are they just GCing?
What ends up, first of all, the answer to that question is yes, but it takes time to do that because when I start you off with, I want you to look at every single opportunity. Do not specialize. Go after everything because you don't necessarily know what your niche is going to be. Okay? One of my guys figured out that his niche wasn't even construction. It was selling wrestling mats and furniture to the federal government.
That's an interesting combo.
He sits in this little tiny office in Denver, Colorado, which is, I've been there. It's in a hotel where they converted half of the hotel into office spaces. But it's a 150-year-old hotel or something. And so the old rooms that they decided not to renovate from the old days, they converted them into little rental offices, and he just sits in there and he makes $12,000 a week all by himself sitting there in this hotel.
Yeah, that's not too bad. Selling wrestling mats.
Yeah.
I guess, just to piggyback off my first question, do you guys kind of, so when we're going through that process of, trying to figure out what, our space is, what our niche is, are you guys still kind of in the background for questions, or, go through the program?
When you're in my system, in my program, you get my personal cell phone number, and you can call me anytime. My rule on answering the phone is if I'm awake and I can hear it ring, I answer it. So that's
a good policy.
Look, people in the construction industry don't call a guy like me to ask me about the weather in Austin, Texas, because they know I don't give a shit about the weather in Austin, Texas. They call me because they're stuck. And I'm uniquely situated because I know the answer to every single question you could ever have, and I can solve any problem on a federal contract. Any problem.
Okay. And what's usually in your experience, have you seen for ramp-up periods? Is it,
It's all different.
It's
I want you to imagine something. What's a topic that if I told you have to walk into a room this afternoon and give a 2-hour speech, what topic would you pick that you could comfortably talk about it for 2 hours? I don't care if it's a hobby or what you do for a living.
Football or real estate or, roofing, something
Okay,
like that.
let's talk about real estate. Okay, let's pick real estate. Can you imagine if there's 30 people in the room, that there would be 5 people in the front row that everything you talked about real estate, they go, yep, I knew that. Oh, we do that all the time. Like, they're know-it-alls. Can you imagine 5 of the 30 would be know-it-alls?
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Can you imagine the opposite? That there'd be 5 people in the back of the room going, what the fuck? I could never do that. I wouldn't even know what that is. Can you imagine there'd be 5 people that are just clueless?
Yes.
Okay. Can you imagine the 20 people would be sitting there going, oh, I hadn't considered that. Well, that's interesting. Ooh, I can incorporate that. Can you imagine there'd be 20 people there that actually learn?
Yes, sir.
Okay. GCExperts is the same way, and I can never tell who's going to be the 5 of this or the 5 of that or the guys in the middle. I can just tell you statistically, over time, most people that get into this start small, they win their first contract in 90 days, but I never know who's going to be able to do what. You know?
Mm-hmm. I suppose market probably is pretty dependent on that as well, where they're at in the country.
No, because look, that tells me you haven't heard this part of anything. Okay, you and I are going to play a game.
Okay.
Do you know what a SAM registration is? Have you ever heard of that?
I have not, no.
Okay, when you get registered to do work with the federal government, it's called a SAM registration. It has nothing to do with a license, it's just a registration. This is who I am, this is how you pay me, and this is what I'm interested in bidding on federal contracts. Okay?
Okay.
Now, once you're registered, That's all there is. So I'm going to give you the answer to the question before I ask you the question. Are you ready for the answer?
Yes.
SAM registration. Ready to play?
Yep.
There's one thing and one thing only required to be a federal contractor, and that is
being SAM registered.
Okay, so if you sell cake mix to the Navy so they can make cakes on ships, what do you need?
A SAM registration.
If you sell bullets or aircraft parts or even construction goods and services, what do you need?
SAM registration.
Okay, now let's play the other part of the game. What state are you in?
Minnesota.
Okay, I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. Scenario number 1. The transformer shall be replaced by a licensed electrician in the state of Minnesota. Now, that has nothing to do with the company that got the job. All they needed was a SAM registration. But you have to find a licensed electrician in the state of Minnesota to replace that transformer. Scenario number 2. The transformer shall be replaced by a licensed electrician. Well, now any licensed electrician from any state can go into Minnesota and replace that transformer. Understand, this is federal eminent domain property. There's no such thing as a state inspector going on to a federal job. Okay? Scenario number 3. The transformer shall be replaced. That literally means that you and I can go replace that transformer on a Saturday. It has nothing to do with the company that got the job. They just have to read the plans and specifications and comply with them. So that's how I can tell you I've done $1 billion worth of federal government construction all over the United States. I've never had a license of any kind other than a driver's license.
So you really legitimately just need a SAM registration.
That's it. So look, I've lived in Austin, Texas my whole life. I've only ever done one federal contract here at the IRS building downtown. We replaced a cooling tower for them. But I didn't do it. I hired a local mechanical outfit to go do it.
So they don't have any inspector. I would assume that they inspect it afterwards, right?
They do inspect the work, but it's not an inspection the way that you think it. Really, what the inspector is there to do is to assure compliance with the contract requirements.
Okay.
Because it's federal eminent domain property, they can actually direct you to do work that's not in accordance with the National Electric Code.
Yeah, that's interesting. Huh. That's a very, I guess, just in my eyes, a ass-backwards way to do it, but I guess they're the federal government, so they can do whatever they like.
That's right, and everything is mission critical. And I don't mean mission in the sense of, the Navy SEALs, although it could be. I've done work at BUDS for the SEALs, okay? But mission critical, the mission of the IRS building, the mission of the National Park Service, the mission of the Bureau of Land Management. I mean, there's 496 agencies. The EPA, the USDA. Hell, the USDA owns EPA owns 11,000 buildings.
So within your program, Sean, is it, I know it's 3 days, it's I'm assuming you do them all down in Texas, all of your trainings.
We used to. It was all live, and then in 2019, the pandemic hits, or 2020, we couldn't bring people into the room anymore. So I had already recorded all our workshops from 6 different camera angles in HD. And so during the pandemic, I just edited those together, and now that it's online.
Oh, okay. So now the entire training's virtually?
Yep.
Oh, that's nice. At least you can go back and review everything.
There you go, and it's at your own pace.
Yeah, okay. And then do you do anything live anymore?
Not any, I mean, I do live conversations just like this one, although I did trick a girl into thinking one time that I was an AI robot responding to her on Zoom.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. That's an easier way to do it too. So you go through the trainings and then any questions come up.
It is, just like in real life, if somebody raised their hand and asked a question, you can just hit pause, pick up the phone, and call me.
Okay, that makes sense. I see how that works then. And then, I know there's a link online just to submit for the training. I'm assuming that just goes right to you.
It puts you right in the training. It puts you right into the training.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Perfect. That's very easy to get into then.
Yeah, it's all automated. Yeah.
Awesome. I like the sounds of that. I don't have a ton of more questions. BJ, do you have any questions by chance?
No, I've already been through this once, and I just wanted you to see it.
Yeah. No,
He hasn't changed any words he said before.
That's good. That's good.
It's good.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I like the sounds of all of it. I don't know, Sean, if there's anything else you wanted to go through with that.
There's 30 years of shit in my head, and the only way to get it out is to ask questions. And generally speaking, I want people to be prepared when they come into this Zoom call with questions, because, I don't know what you don't know, if that makes sense. And the reason that video I was talking about is required watching is because that guy asked me more questions than anybody had ever asked me before. And I just answer them, point blank.
Yeah, I'm always about that. I'm not sure why I couldn't get that one to work.
In all my videos, you'll notice there's no edits in them. And the younger generation really appreciates that, because everybody that's trying to sell something online has all the right lighting and the right everything, all this shit, and they cut their videos and make sure. And I'm just like, that people in the construction industry could see right through that shit.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's everything's doctored up. That's how you know it's edited. I would say, or not truthful is a better word for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like the sound of it. I probably, I don't know, do you have a copy of that? Maybe I'll try a different.
It should be a YouTube video. Here, do me a favor. Pull up on your computer my website, GCExperts.com.
Mm-hmm.
The second video on that website, it looks like a shootout. The guy's shooting me with a bunch of questions.
Yes.
Click play on that and see if it plays.
Nothing's coming up for me.
Wow, that is strange.
So I don't know if it's my browser or, I could try downloading a different browser and trying on that.
I mean, that's a straight up YouTube video. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't get any of these to really play on.
I like to usually set a couple of I just clicked on it and it worked.
It's got to be my computer then. Yeah, maybe it's permissions or something on my browser that isn't allowing me to see this.
I don't know, but it's a straight up published YouTube video.
Are these all on YouTube? So these are all on YouTube?
Yeah. I've got a YouTube channel with 250 videos on it.
Huh. I know they all work, but YouTube works on my browser, but I don't know why it's not working through the website. So I'll be able to figure it out one way or another. I'm assuming if I go to YouTube, I can just go to GCExperts.
Yeah. Well, there's two GC. I used to have an older GCExperts one, but the one that's Sean Reitmeyer GCExperts is the one that I'm currently using.
Okay. Not a problem.
We lost access years ago to this other YouTube channel. Look, we're construction guys, right?
That's okay. I totally get it. I was going to say, I have about 15 different accounts every which way of email.
It just got too hard to log into that thing and log into my email and log into this. And finally I was like, I want everything the same, so I just started doing it off mine.
No worries. Awesome. Well, then I think that's everything I need. Sounds like I need to do some digging into the YouTube and.
I think you
dive
should.
deeper.
You know, like one of the reasons I asked what business you were in was because, look, you didn't wake up when you were 10 years old and say, I can't wait to be a contractor and a real estate guy one day, did you?
You know, maybe once, but it was maybe one day that I did that.
Okay, but what happens is, you know, you turn 16, 17, 18 years old, and all of a sudden you start figuring out that money can buy shit, and you want some of that shit. And so somebody at some point came along and said, hey, well, if you learn how to sell real estate, or if you learn how to, you know, throw a hammer, at some point, but you invested time to learn that before you could make money at it, right?
Correct.
Okay. What did you expect in return for your investment?
Income.
That's right. You expected that. Okay. And I always tell people, look, don't just get on the phone with me and listen to the shit that I'm telling you, and it may or may not be the kind of stuff that you hear. You know, another thing I tell people is you only got to make 2 decisions on any conversation that you have with me. Number 1, decide if I'm full of shit or not. If you decide I'm full of shit, fucking move on with your life. But number 2, am I the kind of guy that you would want to go into this business with? Because personalities are different. I'm not a coddler. I'm not a, oh, it's okay, you'll get the next one. I'm not that guy. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you could have changed that and made it better. This is what you could have said that would have probably gotten you the contract. And then the same side of things with subcontractors and making the deals but anyway, the point being, you invested a lot of time in that. Well, invest a lot of time in this and then make an educated decision as to whether you want to go into this business or not.
Mm-hmm. Yes. No, totally agree. Yeah. I'll definitely get into those videos so that I can, my assumptions were probably going to go forward with it, but of course I should do my own due diligence.
Yeah, do your own due diligence. Google me, for heaven's sake. Look me up. See if there's anything bad about me on the internet. For heaven's sake, I don't know if there is, but if there is, then make a decision based on what you see. You know?
Yeah, no, totally, 100%. Awesome. Well, Sean, I don't want to take up any more of your day than I have to. I appreciate your time and appreciate you putting all this together and speaking with us today.
Yeah, sure. Have a good one, guys.
Awesome. Bye, Sean.
Bye-bye.
CBJ.